So not too long ago, I released a video on the first Descendant. The crux of the video's titled Low Level Farming, Nerfs or Buffs or Complete Redesign, and it's commenting about Bunny, how at low levels that character invalidates pretty much every other character, and when she is in the mission killing the low level mobs, you pretty much just sit around looking pretty, and that's not particularly engaging. I don't really play online games anymore, and when I do, I tend to not interact with people a lot. It's been this way for well over a decade now, probably like 15 years, and I was reminded why exactly I came to that conclusion based on the replies to that video, because quite frankly, I forgot just how retarded many gamers are.
Rated R for retarded.
My channel initially started with condemnation of woke, and what I saw on display in the reaction to that video is very similar to what I deal with when interacting with woke people.
Stop it. Get some help.
We call them NPCs. They don't think for themselves. They have very diminished logical reasoning capacities, and they just repeat whatever update their masters tell them to repeat, that they're programmed to repeat. Much of that is the same with the temper tantrum throwing, name calling, lunacy that was the responses to that video. One of the common or two common issues that I saw were, one, people had, it seemed as if they don't understand, they are incapable. It's like the ability to understand someone's opinion is dangerously close to them, but then like Bunny, they just speed away and run away from the possibility of understanding. And what ends up happening is they end up arguing a point or replying, making a response that makes no sense because I did not say what they are arguing against in the first place. And second, they all repeat the same mantra. Oh, how dare you nerf someone in the PvE game? And like that's the only thing you can think of. No critical thought, no nuance whatsoever, just a strict, absolute mindset. So you've been programmed that you can't nerf anything in a PvE game, and that's the only thing you're ever able to conceptualize. Not the idea that sometimes something could just simply be broken and needs to be fixed. No, you would rather break everything else, and you lack the foresight to realize, understand that if you break everything else, the game will become boring. Now, and the point that many people seem to not understand, everyone or quite a few people were insinuating that I said that you need to use the character. If you do MSNBC, CNN, BBC levels of clipping what I said and not taking the full context, you can twist it to sound like that. But the full context is I was arguing against a possible argument in favor of the status quo. In full context, I gave a hypothetical counter-argument that Bunny is fine as is because she's a free character and she's built for farming. And then in response to that hypothetical scenario or argument, I said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a very strong argument because it would mean that you'll be forced to use a character who you may not like in order to do the farm. That is the full context. It is very much different than saying that I'm saying that no other character is viable. And yet I've seen comments saying that, oh, if I build Thunderkid, I can clear mobs easy. I can clear mobs easy on Sharon. I never said that difficulty clearing mobs. I can, it's fine. So I was really shocked and disappointed to see the same level of NPC brain rot that I interact with whenever I make a non or anti-woke video. It's the same nonsense here. I've made video criticizing other games before, and I thought the Street Fighter community was bad, but you people, when you first said that, you people take the cake. Even one person said something about people with jobs who don't play the game 24/7, or basically our opinion don't count. And I'm like, you do realize that it's people who with jobs who keep the game afloat, right? When you sit down and play the game non-stop, for hours upon hours each day and not pay anything or buy anything in a shop, the game doesn't survive. I'm not saying those with disposable income is more valuable or are more valuable than others, but you need to understand yourself. Some other persons also say, and like this is where I said your mind is simplistic. You're just like some of the NPCs, the woke NPCs, where your own argument counters itself. Some people say that I am selfish, or people like me are selfish because we want to basically bring the rug up, the ladder up after us once we've reached end game and so on. Despite the fact that when I made that video, I made it quite clear I didn't reach end game yet. But anyway, they also indicate or imply that I want to ruin the fun of others. And that is a cardinal sin, according to them. Not dissimilar to how hurting someone feeling is a cardinal sin for the woke people. But we can make the inverse. Using bunny ruins the fun of some people. But you do not care that you ruin the fun of other people. But yet you want to lambaste people for doing essentially what you are doing. Your arguments are nonsensical. And some of you, well, alright, you got your wish. Because even though it's not inherently the game's problem or fault, your disgusting childish temper tantrums have tainted the game now to a point where I can't look at that game and disassociate it from you retards. I want to stay as far away from you as possible. So I'm going to uninstall the game so you can have fun. At the time of me recording this, there was one person who had sense. Well, no, there are a couple of persons who had sense, but I want to highlight this one because he actually disagreed with me. So not a matter of just wanting people to agree with me. He disagreed with me. And I respect how he at least laid out the points. He didn't strawman, he didn't create any false argument, false equivalency. He didn't do any of the intellectually dishonest things that the media would do against gamers and conservatives and all these people. He was at least honest. And it is Gibby Gibbstein 7858. Brother, I respect you. So I'm going to reply to his comment because his comment is the only one worthy of being singled out and replying to, as far as my detractors are concerned. The rest of you might want to consider taking some time away from the game and enlighten yourself, expose yourself to different ideas, read some books, and then come back when you've leveled up your comprehension skills. So Gibby wrote, as a bunny main, even I am annoyed by how it is to play with other bunnies. It can be very annoying spending hours grinding weapons, characters, etc. just to not use them because bunny can sprint through enemies, one-shotting hordes of them as she goes. Which somehow many people seem to just not understand. Either that or they try to gaslight you that this is not a thing or that this is not annoying in the least bit. That being said, I'm going back to what Gibby said. That being said, I think nerfing a character in a PvE game sets a bad precedent for the future. Not only does it weaken a character people spend hours or even days grinding towards, but it also never ends with just that character. It starts with someone like Bunny and then goes on to other characters who are really good at their role. Next, you will see characters like Glay getting nerfed because it isn't fun to watch her destroy bosses in 10 seconds. Not only that, but it would affect farms that a lot of players participate in. So a bunny nerf would also indirectly nerf farms, which a lot of players in the community use to level MR and characters faster. A bunny nerf would objectively negatively impact people that don't even use her, who rely on things like the bunny cave for EXP, not just bunny mains. Even if you hate the character, that just seems like a massive con for most of the community as a whole. The issue isn't that these characters are powerful, it's a power fantasy game and every looter shooter is. The problem is that it is very easy to hit endgame and content doesn't get challenging enough to warrant other characters or playstyles. For now, the best solution would be to add a filter that allows players to filter out people playing Bunny so they simply don't get matched with them. Bunny shouldn't be nerfed, endgame content just needs to be better and more challenging to allow a wider variety of characters to shine and be used, while also making it more difficult for certain characters to trivialize content without flat out nerfing them. A well thought out response, but there are a couple of issues here even with this. So I do understand the hesitation of nerfing characters because in past history, developers have a tendency to over nerf something. Now, one thing I do like here is that he at least has the critical thought to understand that the idea, the solution isn't to buff all characters to reach Bunny's level, because I would have trivialized everything. Some of the NPC responses says buff over nerfing. So I understand the bad precedent for the future. So warrant is a valid complaint or concern. But I would argue that not fixing broken things is also a bad precedent for the future. One of the things about games is the rules need to be fair. And the moment a rule isn't equally applied or fairly applied, many gamers will lose interest. So it will be a kind of slow or obscure decline, but it's still bad for the game overall. So what I think is that it's not that nerfing a character in a PvE game is a bad precedent. You need to be very careful with the nerf. Now, he also mentioned that people spend time investing into the character, and he reiterates that it never ends with a character. Now, for this one in particular, I think that because it's a free character, you will always try to max it, because it's one of the easiest way to increase your MR. So I don't think that applies here, but I do acknowledge that that mentality could apply to another character that is not given for free. Right? And then you say, okay, if I had known that the character would be nerfed, I wouldn't have bought the character, or spend the time building the character or whatever. So what might be a good solution in some card games, this is what they do whenever a card is changed or nerfed. They give back some of the resources used to craft the card to players. So that could be an option here, where you give back some of the resources that will be used to level up or craft the character. So those players who are disenfranchised could use it and build another character or enhance an existing character. Now, he mentioned that, so again, he doubling down and expanding on the idea of the bad precedent that nerfing a character in a PvE game would set. And he said that Glay could get nerfed because it isn't fun to watch her destroy bosses in 10 seconds. Glay cannot destroy a boss in 10 seconds at level 10. That's an endgame or close to endgame level content. And the video was not about characters who can do something really, really well at endgame after you invest all the time and energy and resources into them, but rather at lower levels. So using an endgame boss destroying build to say that a character trivializing low level content is fine, I don't think is a good argument, because we're not arguing the same thing. If Bunny had this AoE zippy blasty capacity at endgame, I wouldn't have a problem, because that would be very, very focused at that point. Alright, so you also mentioned that it affects other farms that people participate in. Now, toward the end of the video, I did mention, and I did address farms, that perhaps farm itself needs to be looked at, or maybe it needs to be changed, redesigned in some way, because the farming isn't particularly engaging. And that is one of the key problems, and that is one of the biggest issues with Bunny, that Bunny reduces engagement of other players once she is on the field for regular farming or regular missions. You don't do anything. She just runs around the battlefield and just kill everything. That's boring. That's not engaging. So perhaps if the farms were engaging, if they were redesigned somehow to be more engaging, then this wouldn't be that much of an issue. Maybe as well you need specific mechanics that counters Bunny. Right? So maybe a nerf doesn't necessarily mean that you drop the character stats or anything, but have countermeasures built in. In the game, you have these abilities, these characters that seal your ability for a moment. For gun-based characters, that doesn't really affect them that much. It's a big albatross around the neck of ability-based characters, normally. However, with Bunny, if she is already activated her duration abilities, then she can just kill those monsters anyway. It doesn't silence her in effect abilities, her ongoing abilities. So maybe the silence mobs should cancel out abilities. That would be a pretty strong nerf to Bunny without actually nerfing her stats. I don't know if that's correct, but it would at least result in you having to shoot the monsters every now and then. And Bunny's AoE would just bypass some mechanics. You have monsters with shields and so on, but you just run through it and you just blow them up. When you are nerfing, or when I make the recommendation to possibly change something, I don't just mean change it without balance. If you were to change Bunny to make her less effective at farming at low levels. She needs to be more self-reliant and sustainable and be able to contribute more to bosses at low levels. That's balance. You're just shifting the focus a bit. Because I even mentioned towards the end of the video that if you just, if Bunny's thing is no longer, I can farm extremely well, you destroy the character. Because that is the only thing that she's known for. Now, he also made a point that these are characters in a power fantasy game. But that isn't a strong argument as I think. Because if you want a power fantasy game, then you can have the characters, each character, press one button and eliminate all enemies on screen with a 1 second cooldown. That is the ultimate power fantasy. You are literal god in that case, but that's not fun. You still need restrictions and limitations, and part of the fun in games is how you can work within that rule set, within that narrow rule set, to achieve extraordinary things. That is the fun of the game. He also mentioned that it's easy to hit endgame. Easy, but still time consuming. And that was the other point I made in the video. Now, if you're rushing through the content, it doesn't take 70 hours like it took me. I will concede that. But I don't know how many people just rush through the content because that's not fun. Just rush through the content. Now, speaking of, let me take the tangent here from Gibby's excellent response. I've seen another NPC say that the game has private mode, you can play in private mode. If the game has private mode that does nothing, you blasted idiot. As a matter of fact, it makes it worse. Because in private mode, I'm now basically playing a single player game. And when I compare the first Descendant to Nier Automata, Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil 4, the original, not the new remake thing, Monster Hunter World, the game falls short. It is not anywhere near as good as those games from a single player perspective. The game needs, at least for me, interaction with other players. So you telling me to play the game as a single player means I'm going to evaluate it as a single player game and the game will fall short. Going back to Gibby's response here. His recommendation, I don't think is sufficient because it will end up, back in the old days, I don't know how MMOs are right now, but back in the old days you will have cases where people of certain classes won't get the gear they want because no one wants to run dungeon with them. They need to be in a guild. I can see that being the same case where people just filter out, or quite a few people might filter out bunny, say, no bunny. So what happens if you have a Colossi or Colossus that is really, really tough and Bunny is your favorite character, and you personally, as a good, you're a good player, so you can make Bunny work, but people say, you know what, I don't want to take the risk, I just ban Bunny. Then you will have no bunnies ever running that Colossus unless you're running with friends. I don't think that's a good solution in that regard. But I do respect the fact that he at least acknowledges reality and at least is offering another solution, because I did ask what other solutions we think is possible. Maybe nerfing isn't the right one, but you need to acknowledge that there is an issue here and then offer some solutions. So I respect Gibby for that. The rest of you, however, need to level up your intellect. And congratulations, you've just convinced one person to just not play the game anymore. And as one of the commenter hinted at or replied, I do work so I can spend money on the game. That you just cost the developer a paying customer. So that means some of you need to pick up that tab. Have fun.